What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into Brother Studios. Now, today in the studio, we're going to be working on the Goliath Bird Eater Tarantula Diorama. Now, this is the third video in the overall series for this 2.0 version of this diorama. We've already made one of these in the past, and it was absolutely spectacular, and we're going to make another one, which is going to be an upgraded level 3 version, kind of like the gold edition of this overall diorama series. So just be aware that this video is specifically about the rock formation between the two wood panels here. Now, I did have a failure in the clay structure here, but we're going to get into that in just a few moments. We're also going to run into just kind of what kind of clays I'm using to get or achieve that failure, and then what kind of clay I'm going to use to repair it. That's why this is white right here, where this is more of a terracotta. This is going to be in the next video, so don't worry. We'll get to that as well. And it's just a different kind of like process that I use to create the upper portion of the rock as opposed to the bottom. So we'll go ahead and get the first layer of clay on the item, and then we'll roll in with the second layer, which will be the repair layer. I also will come back later on down the road and give a full video dedicated to how this first layer of brown clay failed horribly. I'm going to do some back testing in that video to figure out if it's something I did wrong. Maybe it's packaged wrong. Maybe it's the instructions on the side of the box are wrong. Whatever the reason, I'm going to figure it out, and we're kind of like fine tune it. If it's just bad clay, I'm going to tell you it's bad clay, and I hate to be able to like have to say that, but we'll figure it out. I'm going to figure it out, guys. So I'm not going to throw the brand under the bus right away. We're going to try it and see if I was doing something wrong, and then we'll go from there. I'd like to mention that in this video because I do show you the failures along with the successes here in the studio. So you run into the same problems or something like a relative situation, then you know how, hey, look, he had that same problem. I'm having the same issue too. Let's just chalk it up to it's a product error. Or something like that. So we'll get into that in a different video, and I'll do like a comparison and a real breakdown, some back testing to figure out what's up with that. So just be aware. We're going to roll into the video, guys. I hope you guys sit back and enjoy the voiceover as we get this rock formation on this awesome diorama base. Let's get to it, guys. All right, guys, let's jump into this voiceover now. Let's just touch base on what we've done in the past videos. We went ahead and used these board planks. I drilled some holes, countersunk some threaded rods, and we also cut with the proxon saw and some hot wire cutters our overall foam layers before we could go over these with the clay that we're about to start in with in just a moment. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what you're kind of walking into if you haven't had the opportunity to go back and see some of those other awesome crafting videos. Now, as you can see, we got a nice layer here, and I went ahead and used the hot wire cutter. You can find this overall kit in my Amazon affiliate list in the description below if you want to check that out. They're really actually well priced, so if you're just getting into foam work, this is the way to go. Now we're just going to use this to kind of give a just nice general shape to the overall outside of the foam, and that will give us a surface for the actual clay to kind of attach to. We're going to use Gorilla Glue and water to go ahead and attach these layers together, and it's really going to create a really great strong foundation. I challenge you to find a diorama base that is going to be stronger than this. I really wanted to create something extremely strong for the customer, also because it is going to be shipped to Germany. Went ahead and tighten those threaded rods down, and it really gives us a strong base overall. Now we're also going to start off this portion of the video with a weigh-in here. I did say throughout the series that I wanted to do kind of like periodic weigh-ins because I want to keep the overall diorama under 25 pounds. That way I can kind of keep the shipping a little bit down if I need to, and if I have to go over that, then I will, but I'm not going to sacrifice the overall look of the diorama just because I don't want it to be heavy. Right now, we're at 4 pounds and around 6 or 7 ounces, and that is before we attach the clay or any kind of structures to it. Now, I have drilled some holes and put some actual armature wire through the actual diorama foam itself, and we're going to use that as we apply the clay to strengthen it. So here is just another view of that. 4 pounds and then 6 ounces. Pretty cool overall. Now here's the tumbler we're going to be added on. Now I changed this up a little bit after this video, this portion of the video, so just be aware that we're going to use a different tumbler, but the weight's going to be similar to the same. So if I remove that and then I add it on, we're going to be at 5 pounds, 2 ounces, round up to 3, and then of course there it is without the tumbler on top. Let's go ahead and zero that out and then add the tumbler back, and we can see how much the tumbler weighs, which is around about 12 ounces. So you can see that the actual tumbler itself doesn't weigh a whole lot, they're actually relatively light in general. So it's going to be really great. And each one of these Goliath Bird Eater Tarantula dioramas do get either one or two tumblers built into the kind of little log that I sculpt for the top part of the diorama. Pretty cool. We're going to put this on just a black towel here on the workstation. I did wipe everything down just so it's nice, neat, and tidy, but it does not stay clean throughout this process. Just be aware of that. It's going to get kind of messy. So here's the diorama, as you can see here, and I've already got the hole kind of carved out. Now we're using Amaco Airdry clay here. Now I got this at Hobby Lobby, 10 pounds terracotta, 10 pounds, note that, 10 pounds. I really wanted this clay to take us a long way. And when I pull this out here, look at the consistency. It's very great consistency. It has almost the same consistency as a nice warm batch of monster clay. Now this is the first time that I've used this clay. Okay, so here it is. I said that I had some problems out of this clay, and I did. So as I roll through this, just watch how it applies to the actual work surface. It's going onto the foam extremely well. It's like butter. It's easy to manipulate and move. It's easy to take it off the actual block. And I'm going to make an entire video on this failure, and we're going to come back later on and I'm going to try some experiments and run some tests and see if there's something that I'm doing wrong, or if something's wrong with the actual batch of clay, or if it's just the actual brand itself is not labeled properly for what it is. Okay, I'm not the first one to have this similar experience with this Amaco clay, but with it being labeled as an air dry clay, it just did not feel like air dry clay. Did it dry exposed to just the air? Yes, it did. It did, but it was just so brittle, and the shrinkage was just too great. There was too much separation in the clay kind of plates, as it were, and the shelling that you would get was just too great. When I say shelling, I mean it came off in like pieces, and we'll get to that again in just a moment. But just be aware that I'm going over the entire foam surface with this clay. Now, in the previous versions of this diorama, or any large dioramas that I do, I use different varieties of clay because I really want to diversify the art that I create. But I also kind of like think about what I'm trying to get out of the item itself. Like, I want this to be extremely strong because it's going to be sent overseas, but we want also to be lightweight. That's why we use the foam core to kind of keep things light, instead of making just a solid block of wood or a solid block of clay, which weighs a ton and it's just a waste of materials. We're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use the foam, and then we're going to do a shell over the exterior of it. And we expect that clay just to really shrink up and really hug onto the actual foam surface. So in the past, what I've used is I use DOS air dry clay, or I'll use Sculpted air dry clay, depending on which one is better priced at the time. You can get either one of those types of clays. Usually you can get them for around 2.2 pounds on Amazon for really, really cheap. But just make sure you check your shipping when you go into order stuff like that, because sometimes they're like special events or something, or they're trying to like clear out stock of like clays or something online, and you're catching it at the right time, but sometimes it takes a while for you to get that clay in. So for instance, I ordered 2 blocks the other day, and it says they won't be here for till the end of December or mid-January, and that's almost like a month away. So just be aware that, just be very attuned to what you're ordering when you do order things like that off of Amazon. Now, I say order from Amazon and things like that when they're on sale, because I, for instance, order 2 packs at this time for like $6 or $7 a pop. But for 2 pounds of air dry clay, that's actually pretty good, when they usually run about $14 in the stores. And I try to avoid buying clays in Michael's and Hobby Lobbies just because they're just way overpriced. And it was just outside my norm to buy this Amaco clay from Hobby Lobby, but it was on sale. So I was like, wow, I can get 10 pounds of clay, air dry clay. Never worked with it before, so let's get that right. But I can get 10 pounds for it was like $10 or like $9 on sale, whereas the original price is like 15. I was like, I'm getting a steal. This is awesome. I'm going to be able to take this clay so far. Now, again, we'll do some experiments, and I do have some more projects planned for some of this clay. So maybe I'll do it in some different ways, and I'm going to figure out what's wrong with it, guys. I will figure it out, and you'll see that pop up back on my channel later on down the road. If I do release that video, I will kind of link that at the end of this video as well, so you can kind of jump into that. But if it hasn't been released yet, then you just won't see that link at the very end of the video. So just be aware of that. Now back to the actual sculpting itself. So no matter what clay you're using for your overall like item itself, you notice that as I got some of the clay on the actual foam structure, now I'm being very detailed as far as pushing that into all the nooks and crannies that I have sculpted with the hot wire cutter into the outside of the foam. You can use your hot wire cutter to really give a lot of variation in the overall textures of the foam itself, to give the clay a lot to grab onto. So as you can see, I'm really pushing it in, being very aggressive with it. Now what you want to do is, under normal circumstances, is you want to make sure that you go ahead and apply all of this in one singular layer. And the reason you're doing that is because if you do it in patches, they dry at different stages, and then it kind of creates a little bit of a divide between the layers that you're creating at different stages. If you sit down and you just dedicate the time and you do it all in one layer, usually what will happen is the clay will shrink in on itself and it will tighten itself down, and it creates a hugging effect over the entire diorama. Do you get a little bit of shrinking around the top edges where the base plates are meeting? Yeah, you do. But you can always come back in later and add a little bit more. So later on, after this layer completely dries and I come in later and repair it, I will also go in with some air dry clays, and I will kind of blend that up to the top plate as well as the bottom plate, and kind of like create less of a dividing seam between the two. But you want to make sure that you do it all in one layer, so you get that hugging effect. Now, I really thought that I was going to get that hugging effect with this clay. At this point in time in the creation of this project, I was extremely happy with how this rock formation was turning out. I was really, really excited, and I thought that I was really just going along great with this. So I'm applying, I'm hand sculpting texture into it with some tools, building out the clay on the inside of the hole that's going to hold the second spider. Going ahead, tucking the rock formation or clay around the bottom of the formation, and then texturing that as well. Still plan to probably taper that around the top and the bottom into the outside edges of the bark. And then, of course, we also tightened down the armature wires that I had running through the entire project. And that armature wire, as it tightens down onto the actual rock formation, gives an extra level of strength, and just it's holding on to the clay from the inside a little bit. All right, so here we are. Dun, dun, dun. Destruction. Woke up the next morning, and this clay is just brittle as could be. Like, I could have went over this entire thing with plaster and it would have been stronger than this. It's absolutely atrocious. Now, I've already done some tests at this point in the video, and I went over it with DOS Airdry clay. DOS, if you're watching this, guys, your clay is absolutely knocking it out of the park. Now, this is white, and I'm glad that I had white instead of terracotta on hand for DOS Airdry clay, because it really gives us a distinguishing difference in color between the two. So what I'm doing here now is with this is I'm going to go ahead and go around the entire surface with my screwdriver, the butt end of the screwdriver, and I'm going to hit it, and I'm going to see where there's any hollow spots. Anything that's overly hollow needs to come off, and I'm going to go over it with an entire smooth layer of DOS Airdry clay. What you'll see me do is I will take a little bit of it. It's very moist. It's very amazing to work with at DOS Airdry clay. And I'm going to go ahead and intentionally push this very firmly into any crevices or cracks, and I'm going to go over the entire outside structure with this DOS Airdry clay. Now, although the technique we're using is mainly from the concrete world, we can apply it to our clay structures as well, whether it's pottery or clay or whatever you're using. Now, the actual technical definition is here on the screen now. So it's called parging. Is a technique that involves applying a thin layer of cement or clay, mortar, plaster to masonry surfaces to enhance their appearance and protect them from the elements. So what we usually use this for in this situation is we're using it to strengthen the outside edge. Now, if you wanted to apply an additional layer on top of this, then you could use that to apply extra like rock textures or continue building up layers. But just be aware that you want to make sure that your air dry layers are bonding properly between layers, okay? So if you put like a layer of acrylic paint on before you do the next layer, then you would want to just be very detailed about how you do that, so that way you get good adhesion between the layers. That's all I'm saying. And the best way to get the best adhesion is to do everything while it's fresh, instead of waiting for it to dry, to dust over, and then put the next layer on, and then you can get separation, things like that. So it's called parging, and it's a technique that we'll use in the clay and the sculpting world, as well as those out there in the field using it for concrete work. Alright, so as you can see, this is quite a bit of a process, but it's actually quite therapeutic and very enjoyable. So right now in the background, I have just really like just chill music playing, or I'm like watching like a binge watch of a marathon of Harry Potter movies or something like that. So usually like I have my head down and I'm just like going to work on what I'm working on in the studio. But then I'm just usually just kind of like listening things in the background. I do have an awesome playlist here on my YouTube channel if you check out my playlist. And I think I have it as public view. It's just a long list of just very long video music channels, like everything from Christmas music to like hard rock to classic rock and roll to like Viking music. And depending on what I'm working on, depends on what I'm actually listening to in the studio. So depending on who it is and what I'm listening to depends on whether or not I can actually play that on the actual content that I'm uploading to YouTube. But just remember that I'm listening to something pretty chill in the background, and that's why I sometimes lean so heavily on the voiceovers after I'm like done creating, because I'm just chilling in the studio, enjoying the process, and you're just kind of just along for the ride. Making sure to push that up into the kind of crevices around the top portions of the existing Amaco structure. There's a little bit of separation there at the top, and I'm pushing that in there, making sure that I get a good squeeze in between those layers there. Applying a lot of pressure as I kind of smooth that out across different areas here. And I'm also getting a different rock formation here, so I'm able to like change the way the rock is shaped a little bit here and there, but I still want it to have a little bit of that kind of hourglass shape. And that's what I really had in my mind's eye when I decided to offer the Goliath Bird Eater as like a more advanced diorama, like a level gold type of thing. Pushing that into that crack right there, making sure to really push very hard into that, making sure I get great adhesion between those two clay layers there. And how the moisture content of the clay makes it extremely easy to do this. I'm very seldom, if ever, adding additional water to this DOS air dry clay to achieve this parging. So as you can see, it's just really easy to work with. So here we are jumping a little bit into the future. Here we have a full, complete layer over the entire structure. Now you'll notice that some areas I still have that brown Amaco clay kind of peeking through. Now the overall hardness of it is quite good. I'm able to use my finger and I can scrape off small segments of it. So it's still a little bit chalky in a lot of ways, but if you take it in your hands, you can easily just break the clay in half. I'm not saying you can't break the DOS or the Sculpey when you're working with it and after it's dry. And we're going to use a different technique later on in this series to create different types of dirts out of air dry clays. So make sure you stay tuned to that. I haven't done it in like my own creation of flocking or dirt terrain, and it's going to be something new that I'm going to try out here in the studio. So because this is going international, you can't send dirt overseas. So we're going to be making something out of scratch. Look at that. Looks absolutely phenomenal. Now, you also notice that I have a little bit of terracotta clay on the very top portion. We're going to get into that into the next segment or the next video. So don't worry. You're not going to miss anything there. You can always check out that next level and next video. And that's me using a little bit of Sculpey terracotta air dry clay to create that formation. We will also be introducing a little bit of plaster as well as some other techniques just to kind of get a really good feel over the entire top part of the rock formation. There is kind of scraping that with my fingernail there, but otherwise I was able to save this diorama with the DOS air dry clay. Otherwise, guys, I'll figure out why the Amaco clay just isn't working out for me. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos in the near future. I'll catch you in the next one. Later, guys.